Hello there and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. Thank you for joining me. I'm That's The Way It Goes 09 and this is
Stephen Price, my
good friend from Wales. And in this special episode of Doctor Who Radio we will be, let's remember up everyone, previewing The Snowmen, the Doctor Who Christmas Special for 2012, a recap of what's happened so far, and most importantly a review of the new Tardis console which will be introduced in The Snowmen. But first let's have the recap. The previous adventures for the Doctor had been the Angels in Manhattan, which saw the departure of the Ponds, and also the Great Detective, which was a special mini episode as a preview for The Snowmen. This was shown on the UK Children in Need night, featuring the return of Lady Vastra, the Silurian detective, and her loyal sidekicks, the Human Samurai, and also Strax, the rather back-chatting Soltarian nurse cum butler. So we now have the Snowmen to look forward to. And from what we've seen, what would you make of it, Steve?
Well, the last episode that was shown was Amy and Rory being taken by the Weeping Angels.
Yeah.
An angel. It showed River and the Doctor talking, and that was the end of it.
A rather grief-stricken Doctor.
You've seen the Doctor reading something in the park, and that was the end of it. But did he have an encounter with the Weeping Angels that has made the TARDIS regenerate?
Good idea. I was thinking that. In the Great Detective you see a Doctor who's forlorn, and in essence Vastra and her colleagues have to do it all themselves, because the idea apparently is that he's basically retired. Now Steve's hit on a rather interesting thing. The Snowmen features apparently the great intelligence from the second Doctor stories, The Abominable Snowmen and The Web of Fear, which oddly enough also featured the first appearance of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. And if that's not enough, we have this new TARDIS console. And as Stephen pointed out, Roy and Amy weren't simply leaving happily, they were actually zapped by Weeping Angels and sent back to the past, the 1920s or 30s of New York. And because of this, there's the possibility that the TARDIS has either been changed by him to block out and sort of get over his grief, erase any memory of them, or as soon as that happened the TARDIS sensed his pain and agony at it and automatically changed itself. And I put this to you, Steve, and everybody else listening. There's always been the fact that it's been claimed that the Doctor's link and the Companion's link to the TARDIS is what enables them to understand alien species. So if that's true, that means there must be some sort of link between the Doctor and anybody else who travels in the TARDIS. So perhaps depending on the mood, when there's a big mood shift, things change. So do you think with the style of the Abominable Snowman sequel, The Snowmen, which in itself is a little sort of reference to that story, that this is like a sort of return to the classic style?
Yes, it looks like TARDIS cult. So it's going back to the classic series. They want it for the 50th anniversary.
There's all been this thing lasting since the Asylum of the Daleks, where he had his identity erased by Oswin, so that the Daleks don't even know who he is. So it would seem like, yet again, they're resetting things to the way Doctor Who used to be in the early days, where there was hardly any information about the Doctor known, and he was rather secretive, particularly in the William Hartnell encounter in The Unearthly Child. Hence the mood of this Christmas special. He's retired. He's not interested in, being a hero or a veteran, which was what the first Doctor did. The implication being that he only sort of started helping people because he was kind of forced into it when the teachers, Ian and Barbara, sort of, caused him to sort of absorb certain human mannerisms and morality. And there's also, of course, Sir Ian McKellen in this story, doing the voice of what is supposed to be the Great Intelligence. I mean, are you excited about that, being somebody's watched Doctor Who from the 60s, about the intelligence coming back?
Yes, I've seen, the last episode of, like a slideshow of the Abominable Snowman. It's nice to see snowmen in it. This Christmas special.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it just seems a bit of a coincidence. I mean, Sir Ian McKellen's perfect casting.
I mean, you could tell it was men dressed up, walking through, like the mountains, where it was filmed. So, and it's
Tibet and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it looks better, with the technology today.
And that was the first encounter with the Great Intelligence. It's some sort of, just like the Celestial Toymaker or Fenric, it's never been revealed, the actual origins of these characters, of what they actually are. But there's the suggestion that they're either some sort of higher Great Intelligence, if you'll pardon the pun, or perhaps like the Time Lords, a highly evolved species or something like that. But with each one of them, they are manipulated, while the Doctor is, trying to use his powers and his knowledge to help. They're there to sort of cause chaos, really, like the trickster, basically.
Yeah.
In The Abominable Snowman, you had snow in the cold Himalayas, so oddly enough that was sort of Christmassy, I suppose. And in that episode, for people who don't know, it was the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, with his flute and his woolly sort of coat type thing. And in the story The Web of Fear, you had the first appearance of Unit, which were themselves yet again in their 1960s sort of shadowy, didn't know much about them. And of course that was set in London, curiously enough. But back to the TARDIS. Since there's the 50th anniversary, it would seem to me, as I've said before, that they're trying to sort of cut back and restore some of that 60s mysteriousness about the Doctor, and perhaps back to basics. So, from a design point of view, what do you make of this new TARDIS?
I don't like the look of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I suppose it'll look better when it's on the telly.
Sort of breathe a bit more.
Yeah.
We've only got that one picture, and it's from a specific point of view.
Yeah.
So there could be more to it.
Yeah. I want to see more of the TARDIS, just not the console room. I want to see the library. I want to see the swimming pool.
See, yeah. That's the whole point, isn't it, really, with the time and relative dimension in space.
The only time we've seen a bit more of the TARDIS was the second control room with the Doctor.
Masqua Mangora.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Steve. I said that several times to Idris Describe Now and other Doctor Who fans. The one big irony and kind of a bit of a letdown, I would say, about the new series, you have a bigger budget and you have technology, computer, CGI, etc., where they can create things that would have been never possible budget or technology wise in the old series, classic series, whatever you want to call it, and yet in the new series they've done that very rarely.
Yeah, because when Matt Smith took over from Tennant,
yeah,
there was hardly any CGI in the series at all.
My point is though that you've seen two beautifully designed TARDIS consoles, the one which was of course from the 9th Doctor to the end of the 10th Doctor, which was this old sort of stony looking affair, looked like it had been sort of having lots of things replaced. And then with Matt Smith you had this the cheese looking TARDIS console which was spiralling everywhere and sort of a staircase that didn't actually lead anywhere. Sort of more of a sort of wild affair, sort of echoing the 11th Doctor's sort of very eccentric, even more than the 10th Doctor's personality. But the one thing they've never had is very much of the other rooms, which he used to have all the time, up to at least the 6th Doctor's story, Attack of the Cybermen. In the 8th Doctor's time, they showed a little bit of the other rooms, like the Cloister room, which for some reason had the Eye of Harmony. But the Doctor that had the most TARDIS rooms, was the 4th Doctor in Invasion of Time, where they actually journeyed on purpose to the rest of the TARDIS because they were trying to get away from Centaurian warriors. And in the 5th Doctor's era they had bedrooms of Adric, Nizza, Tegan, and even Perry, and even Romana. So really a bit of a letdown, I would say. And there is, everyone, a story called Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. So maybe that's why they cut down the console itself, so they can free up money to explore the rest of the TARDIS.
There was one Doctor Who episode I watched, I don't know if it was the Toy Maker, but every room they were going in, there was a TARDIS, another TARDIS in there.
Oh, that was Logopoulos, I think. Because the Master had landed his TARDIS in the Doctor's TARDIS and they went into the Master's. But the problem is it would cause recursive reclusion or something like that. So you'd enter another TARDIS and then you'd enter another TARDIS. But the problem is, like the 4th Doctor said, you could end up getting trapped in this sort of incursive bubble. It was basically a trap by the Master.
Right, there's something I want to ask you. None of the previous Doctors have been said that they haven't been asked.
Yeah.
Did you see that interview with Christopher Eccleston?
Of course, yes. Now this is important, everyone. In yet another, me and Steve have talked about this before. Basically you have a scenario, don't you, Steve, where you have a past Doctor being interviewed. Are you going to be doing the 50th? Have you been approached? And they give a rather sort of not answering yes or no, but they sound like they're sort of hinting at having some sort of involvement. He basically said something to the effect, if I answered that I'd have to shoot you.
Yeah.
Which is basically, yes, I do know something, but if I told you, then I'd get into trouble with X number of people, i.e. the BBC or Moffat.
Yeah.
So do you think that's another sort of purpose, little bit of yes?
Yes, I think so.
About
Colin Baker, he said he hasn't been asked. He said how can he go on about saying now I've changed and aged?
Well, Colin Baker's been in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he did say one of the reasons was because he wanted to lose weight.
Well, he didn't lose much, did he?
Oh dear. So what is your take on this? Do you think they have the BBC have actively gone out and tried to get as many of the past doctors as possible.
Yeah.
Ah.
And it says, when you a friend of mine was in some play in Wales, some film he had a small part, and he wasn't allowed to say what he was doing in the film or anything, so they probably signed a contract saying they're going to be in it, but they can't tell anybody on the outside.
I see. Of course, yes. In the same way that Matt Smith knew about being cast as the Doctor months before it was announced.
Yeah.
Because in his interview, when they revealed the 11th Doctor, i.e. Matt Smith, as being the 11th Doctor in the special Doctor Who Confidential, he pointed out that he had to keep it from his own family for several months.
Yeah.
So the same thing. So in essence, they've already had experience of doing that sort of thing. In the case of the 50th anniversary, keeping it stum that they've got the involvement of past Doctors. The only difference being that with this, it was Matt Smith being cast as a new Doctor.
And Colin Baker wanted to lose weight, but he didn't lose much, and it was stated that when he left he couldn't wait to get a full English breakfast.
How much do you weigh, Steve?
15 stone.
Oh, blimey. Because that's been one criticism of Colin Baker, that since his Doctor Who days, he has, with all due respect to Mr. Baker, he's been to the Bakers quite a lot, let's put it that way.
Because I had my photograph taken with him twice, and I thought I was big until I seen him.
It does seem as though even Peter Davison's put on a bit of chubbiness since his days, because he was really thin in the 80s. But not, it would seem, Paul McGann. He's aged rather well, hasn't he? Oh, well, to be fair, Eccleston, it was only like 6-7 years since he last played the Doctor. With Paul McGann, it's nearing 17 years since the Doctor Who, movie. I know he's done, oddly enough, he's done more Big Finish audios featuring the 8th Doctor than even any of the television Doctors.
Because Christopher Eccleston will never put on weight, because he runs marathons and his hobby is athletics.
Just like David Tennant. So that's really the difference. Perhaps it's a difference in generations of actors, But it would be nice, wouldn't it, if even Tom Baker's put on weight. It'd be nice if they lost weight for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, but you've got to think that Tom Baker, he's in his late 70s now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got an excuse. I don't know, it'd just be nice to see them how they used to look. Plus it'd be healthy for them, Perhaps they could just, I don't know, like Melody Pond River Song, before she regenerated into the, Alex Kingston one, said, "Not now, Dad, I'm thinking of a dress size." Perhaps they could do that with, Colin Baker up to recording.
Well, if Colin Baker can lose weight.
Yes, everyone, if you're listening, we are discussing the merits of the Doctors losing weight for the 50th anniversary, even though I can honestly say I don't happen to weigh that much. But go on, Steve.
Because he said, oh, my hair is white. And I was going to say to him, I thought, oh no, I better not, because he punched me out.
My hair's white, and you were going to say something like, yes, it's not your hair you should be worried about.
They can shove a wig on him, man.
I beg your pardon?
A wig. A curly wig, so you can look like he did when he was the Doctor, then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think... If nowadays they're able to, in their makeup rooms, they're able to make people look a good, 10 or even 15 years younger, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a new film about Alfred Hitchcock, and for that, Anthony Perkins, isn't it? Anthony Hopkins? I'm getting mixed up. Oh, Anthony Perkins was the one who was actually...
Perkins was in the Psycho film.
Which was made by Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, Anthony Hopkins, he's had the reverse done to him. Instead of, being made younger, he's been made older and more overweight, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Although some actors were actually purposely put on weight for a film or TV role. Sort of part of method acting. Anyway, back to the Doctor Who Christmas Special, The Snowmen. So, we have a new TARDIS. We even have a new costume. We have the return of Lady Vastra and her sidekicks from A Good Man Goes to War. We have the return, apparently, of the Great Intelligence. And for all we know, the Great Intelligence, the Celestial Toymaker, and Fenric could all be the same thing. Yeah. And also we have Richard E. Grant, who of course has played the Doctor twice. Once in The Curse of Fatal Death, as bizarrely enough the 10th Doctor on screen, and also the 10th Doctor, or 9th Doctor, the 10th Doctor, Curse of Fatal Death, and the 9th Doctor in The Scream of Shauka, an animated story. So what do you think his character, Richard E. Grant, is going to be? The Valeyard, because he looks like it? Or is that just sort of jumping to conclusions?
I have no idea what sort of character you'd play. Probably evil, in charge of the Snowmen, perhaps?
Good idea. Because they're sort of taking orders from him, and he's taking orders from the Great Intelligence.
Didn't this, another Samtara, and that's, in it, didn't he die? Didn't he die in one of the other episodes?
That's true. But apparently, in the story, they give you clues that a friend of a Doctor's, I read this on Doctor Who TV in one of their teasers, that apparently, a little hint, one of the Doctor's friends brought him back to life or something. So Commander Strax, I think that's how you pronounce it, is actually dead. He's a dead Samtarian who's also a nurse and a butler.
Singing.
So Richard E. Grant's character, I was just thinking, could be like a sort of Tobias Vaughan character, in the sense that he's taking instructions from a higher being. In Invasion, it was Tobias Vaughan being taking instructions from the Supreme Cyberman thing, that he had in his office, and the same thing with whatever Richard E. Grant's character is. He's taking instructions from Sir Ian McKellen's character, who is in The Hobbit right now. So the new TARDIS console room basically is the same size of the classic series, at least that's what it looks like, and you have, from what I can gather, roundels inspired by the 1980s and maybe a sort of early 1990s sort of illustrations that were in Doctor Who magazine, suggesting how Sylvester McCoy's TARDIS could have been if the series had continued. Then you have a TARDIS rotor which hangs from the ceiling, very much like the 8th Doctor's. in the background you have panels which are very much like the Peter Cushing movie, and I'm not entirely sure what they're meant for, but perhaps they operate, cabinets or something like that. And then the actual dashboards of the TARDIS, you have like 5 separate areas on the basic TARDIS design since 1963. All looks like sort of radar type controls, like you had in the second and first and third Doctors TARDIS console, up to about, I think, Inferno. Like sort of old submarine type dash things, and little sort of handles, and instead of any electronic sort of displays, it's all very sort of old 1950s 60s type stuff. And then you have what basically is Gallifreyan sort of writing, very much like the 10th Doctor used to have, sort of calculations and coordinates, that sort of thing. Again, similar to the 8th Doctor's type thing. So just oddly enough, just like the 10th Doctor's and the 11th Doctor's TARDIS, the first 2 of the new series, you have a sort of potpourri, as Sylvester McCoy used to say, of different styles. But the main emphasis, Steve and viewers, is bringing it back. Less is more. But what did you think of it? Do you think this is the way we should... Is it going to be a TARDIS console room that's going to be for several years, or just for the 50th anniversary?
I think it'd be for the 50th anniversary. Well, I seen them filming the Christmas Special back in May, and the TARDIS just looks the same from the outside. And I was told to leave the set because I was taking photographs of it, and I think that's the reason why, because they were opening and closing the TARDIS door, not for me to see the new interior inside of it.
Oh, did they? Holy crap.
Yeah, they told me, can you leave the set,
Ah. Oh, so they had the set there and then. Oh,
yeah.
Blimey. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, I have to say I like it. Although I'm a little bit baffled why they decided to release
people out there don't like it. I don't like the look of it. Possibly better when it's been shown on screen,
I'm baffled why they released teasers which showed they sort of hinting sections of it, and then they released the full picture, because from my point of view it would have been far more juicy and salivating up to the episode if they just let us imagine how big it was. And I've discussed this with Idris Scribe now, or as I refer to him now, because he hates this new console room, absolutely detests it. He thinks it was designed by a university student or something. And he basically, in a nutshell, viewers, I just subscribe now, who I now call I Just Grinch now. Oh, Steve. Basically now, Steve and viewers, I refer to I Just Subscribe now as I Just Grinch now, because he has described the TARDIS room as his exact words were, if I found myself in this TARDIS console room, I'd take a piss up against the walls, because I'd think it was a urinal. That's how he thinks it is. He thinks the new TARDIS console room, that probably cost thousands to build, is no better than a public urinal. So there we go. I like the fact that it's going back to the old style, and I seriously hope they show more of beyond the TARDIS. But to be terribly honest, Steve, I don't really think in this day and age they have an excuse not to be able to do it since 2005. The only time they've done that at all was in Christmas Invasion, when the 10th Doctor was newly regenerated looking through the wardrobe. And other instances as well, very briefly during the 11th Doctors. I think it was Time, the 2010 special, I believe it was, for children in need. But really, if the old series could do it for bugger all money, surely now in this day and age with a huge budget they could be able to do 10 times as much. So there's some sort of bizarre logic going on here since 2005. They got more money, and yet the old series was able to show much more than they did. Because
we didn't see in series 1, where the Doctor says to Rose, "You can't go out like that, go and change," you haven't seen the changing rooms either. Yeah,
sort of stingy really, wasn't it, Elizabeth? And the whole point is, the TARDIS can be anything beyond, can't it? It can go forever. So they have an inbuilt excuse for having, a shitty looking TARDIS room beyond that looks, views, oh fuck's sake, that, oops, I swore, oh no. You could have a console, fuck, shit. So basically, zero. So they've actually, bizarrely enough, got an inbuilt excuse, TARDIS wise, because it can be anything beyond the TARDIS console room. Any number of rooms. It can stretch on to rooms that aren't even rooms. They could be entire cities or entire stadiums, or they could be the size of just like in Castrovolva, literally a room for cricketing gear and awards, etc., i.e. the 5th Doctor, which was probably suggested by Peter Davison because he's a big cricket fanatic. And that's the point. They can have a scene where a new TARDIS room is revealed, even if it's just for a few minutes, and the companion could say, this looks cheap. Or you could have the viewer saying, oh god, they didn't spend much money on that, did they? Well, that's the whole point. It can be anything, It can be as cheap as it wants to be. It could quite literally just be a room with a very small toilet, and that's it. Because that's the thing about, why does science fiction or a bigger budget have to enable expensive, sets when it can actually be the opposite? And since they did that all the time, they literally did have just cardboard backdrops to entire cities, didn't they? Like in the Daleks.
Because they've just recently moved studios.
The producers could take the shit. They could save money on purpose and just piss off the viewers by tongue in cheek by having all these crappy sets in the TARDIS. They could.
Because they've just changed studios. They were at Upper Bank, I think it's in Pontypridd, and they've gone down to Cardiff Bay now, which is the new BBC studios.
They could have a room, imagine the scene, right? You have the Doctor and companion entering a new room, and inside is just a bunch of scales with the word property of C. Baker. And it's really dusty, doesn't look like it's been used in years. He said in a rather sarcastic manner. Actually, Ida Subscribe Now came out with a fantastic idea. Imagine this, right? Clara and the Doctor and other companions are in the new TARDIS console room. And she mentions, Doctor, this isn't very big. I thought you said it's bigger on the inside than the outside. And the Doctor goes up to a switch, and either it's pitch black or brightly lit, but he goes up to a switch flicks it, and in no time, Matrix style, that small TARDIS room becomes huge and gigantic and expands, rebuilds itself so it's bigger in the eyes, right in front of Clara.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's all we can think of saying, really. And bear in mind, this is a preview and review. And preview of the episode, from what we know, and a review in the sense of what we've seen so far. But come the episode, I think you agree, Steve, and the viewers out there, who thank you for joining me for this episode and joining Steve. The simple fact is, we might be greatly proven wrong on a number of issues. The TARDIS could be bigger than we think, or that might be a secondary console room, and the episode might not feature the great intelligence, or it might do. So, from your, like a final thought, Steve, do you think, what would you predict this episode out of 10 will probably get? Expectations wise.
I say about 8.
Oh, really? So your presumption from what you've seen so far is that it's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's all the time we have for Doctor Who Radio Show. Thank you for joining me. That's the way it goes. 09 and
Stephen Price. Goodbye.
And next time, whoever's joining me, I'll see you for a review of The Snowmen. Until then, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.